Hi everyone and welcome back to Bonnie Astrology. Today we're discussing Venus retrograde in Leo. Venus, planet of love, beauty and finances, is going retrograde in the sign of the Lion from the 22nd of July to the 3rd of September 2023. And this is going to mean something for all of us collectively, but I am going to be going into as well what it means for each of the individual zodiac signs. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for regular updates, and if you want to contact me or follow me at my socials, the information is listed in the description. All the information is listed in the description. That's the only place that you can get me. There's the only official accounts and that's the only official email address. You can contact me if you want to look into my astrological services. Be wary of people in the comments or on Instagram reaching out to you or following you offering services, because that is not me, that is a scammer. So let's get into Venus retrograde in Leo. So the official retrograde period is going to last from the 22nd of July until the 3rd of September. Venus retrograde is approximately 40 days and it happens every 18 months. The last Venus retrograde would have been happening in December, January 2021 to 2022. And although this is the official retrograde period, the shadow period, the pre-shadow period began on the 19th of June. And the shadow clears on the 7th of October. So the shadow period is typically a time where we see some themes crop up of what Venus retrograde is going to mean for us, what areas we're going to need to reflect on, what relationships we're going to need to reflect on, what's going on financially, what's going on romantically, and interpersonal relationships. So Venus as a planet rules in astrology our relationship to love, our relationships in general, and beauty and finances. And anytime a planet is retrograde in astrology, it does not actually mean that this planet is going in reverse. That is an illusion. It appears to be moving backwards. And retrogrades, if we think of even the spelling of retrograde, R-E, we start to review, rethink, rediscover, reassess, reconsider, reconcile the Venusian themes, okay? So this might be, for example, that you decide that you want to reconcile with an ex. This might be that you decide you want to reconsider your spending. You know, this is a time of review and rediscovering and reassessing. It is not a time that favors new beginnings, okay? This is time when we want to go backwards a little bit in order to move forwards. Now, retrogrades themselves tend to cause disruption. Even if you're not wildly familiar with astrology, when we think of Mercury retrograde, you probably have some kind of idea of what that means, because it is so much, it's used so commonly now in popular culture. People say, oh, Mercury's in retrograde when something goes wrong, if it's in Mercury retrograde. But retrogrades are known to cause a bit of disruption. And Leo in astrology also rules romance, and it rules drama, and it rules pleasure and creativity. So this can be quite a dramatic retrograde period, especially when it comes to themes of love and romance. Now, this does mean that ex-lovers can come out of the woodwork, or you can run into exes, or you can dream of exes, or you can reconsider the dynamic that you had with an ex. Perhaps you're reviewing your past relationships in general and you're thinking, well, actually I could have done something differently here, or actually I didn't see this so clearly, and you're rethinking it and reassessing it, and maybe rediscovering something that you hadn't realized previously. So exes are a theme, whether you're in a relationship or you're single. They do tend to come out of the woodwork during a Venus retrograde, even if it is just in the sense that you are dreaming of them or thinking of them, or you run into them by chance. In some cases, this can bring up past relationships, whether it's in your dreams or whether it's running into an ex or hearing from one. It can bring up relationships from the past for closure as well. So really any kind of relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's friendship or family, this can be for closure or reconciliation. It does depend on many factors. You know, it's not going to be the same for everybody. But because Leo is such a creative sign, we can reconnect with the creative parts of ourselves that we might have lost touch with. So if you maybe feel called, or you felt called particularly during the shadow period, to take up painting again. So for me, I took up watercolor painting again. Or you used to play an instrument and you feel called to play that instrument again. This is a really nice time to reconnect with something creative. Or maybe you want to join an amateur drama society because you once did that before. This can be a beautiful time to reconnect with your creativity, because Leo is a sign associated with creativity and it's associated with the arts. And if we think about retrogrades causing disruption, well, we have the writers and actors strikes going on in Hollywood at the moment. So we can really reconnect with something or someone that we've lost touch with. And this can be, as I say, a time to pick it up again and, you know, wonder why you stopped doing it, why you stopped painting, or why you stopped communication with an old friend or something like this. It can be a pick up where you left off kind of energy. Where that goes once Venus goes direct is unknown. It is simply a theme coming up at this time. It is more common to reconnect with someone from the past, so regardless of your zodiac sign or whether this person is romantic potential or not, it is likely that you will run into people that you haven't seen in a long time by chance, or you will hear from people you haven't heard from in a long time. People will be reaching out to you, and you'll probably get more of an idea of what type of people might reach out to you reconnect with in your horoscope portion. But this can also be seeing people from the past, say someone you used to be friends with, as romantic potential now, if you're single. And of course, in current relationships, this also means that it can bring up old issues that need to be reviewed and resolved within romantic relationships. Now, one thing to note as well is that Venus does rule our relationship to our style and our aesthetic. And Venus retrograde can be a time where you may be recommended not to do certain things. So you're recommended not to suddenly change your hair, not to suddenly get a tattoo, because you will not be seeing things clearly. So when I talked about before how Venus retrograde is not actually the planet moving backwards in the sky, it's not actually going in reverse, it is an illusion. But this illusion is cast over the things that we find beautiful, the things that we find charming. And so you may want to experiment with your style and your aesthetic, but this might not be something that you like once Venus goes direct. So I would recommend not getting any permanent tattoos, not chopping off all your hair if you suddenly feel the urge, not dyeing it blue. I say blue because they tell you blue can be temporary, but it's not. Just speaking from a horrific experience, I've had every hair color under the sun, and I do remember trying once when I had blonde pieces in my hair and I wanted to do a temporary blue because I'd done temporary pinks and things, and the blue just soaked right into the bleach and it was just such a disaster. So I just want to say blue, as you know, you think it's temporary, it's not. These type of experimentations just might not work out the way that you want them to, or you might find them beautiful one minute and then think, what was I thinking? This is the same with buying new things, buying new items to wear. You might not necessarily like them so much when Venus goes direct, especially if you notice they're very out of your usual color palette, they're very out of your usual style, which is good sometimes, but during Venus retrograde, not so much. So certainly don't get a tattoo, or don't do anything that you can't easily change or reverse. Or invest a lot of money in, with Venus also ruling finances. So I would recommend that if you are feeling experimental, as many people will be, because this Venus retrograde is going to make a square to Uranus, try things that are temporary. Get temporary tattoos, you know, the little stick-on ones, or get clip-in hair extensions or fake piercings, something that you can take off again, something that isn't going to last, something that is not permanent, because retrogrades are not the best time to begin something that you would like to have a degree of permanency with. So you may also find you want to revisit old styles. Maybe you want to go back to your natural hair color. That's recommended during Venus retrograde because it is revisiting who you are effectively. That can be something that is good to do during Venus retrograde. Or if you're, needing a new night cream or something, for example, going back to a night cream that used to really work for you. Sometimes we experiment and we then pick up things we used to use cosmetically or in terms of beauty. That can even be clearing out your wardrobe and finding something you haven't worn in a long time and thinking, I really like this. So reconnecting with old styles or old cosmetics or things that you used to like to use is recommended. It's also not the best time to take up with a new stylist or someone who works in cosmetics, and you may find with Venus retrograde in Leo in particular that it is harder to get an appointment with your hairdresser, or your hairdresser may be out of town. So for example, since Venus went into Leo, my hairdresser has been on a very long distance, very lengthy trip, so she's not available. And my dear friend Emma, who does my nails, will also be going on an extended trip, so she won't be available. You may find that during Venus retrograde that those who work in the beauty industry are not available, not as easy to get, but it's also not a good time to try somebody new. So the last time Venus was retrograde in the sign of Leo. Now Venus retrograde happens every 18 months, but the last time that it was in this particular sign, which is important because this will bring up themes. The last time Venus was in this particular sign was 2015, the summertime. Quite similar to this, it's a summer Venus retrograde. So connections and themes from this time period in your life may pop up. Think about what key personalities, especially from that summer, do stand out in that year for you. What was going on in your love life? What was going on in your relationships? What was your style like? And what was going on with you financially? What was your relationship like to money during that particular summer? It's worth noting that with Venus retrograde as well being in the sign of Leo, actors, entertainers, musicians are more likely to be in the spotlight for their relationships or their finances. And if we look back to 2015, during that particular retrograde, we have a few significant celebrity splits. And we're already seeing the celebrity split drama happening as this Venus retrograde begins with Ariana Grande, Sofia Vergara. You do tend to hear more about celebrity splits, especially when it's in the sign of Leo. But during the last one, Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert divorced, and so did Gwen Stefani and Gavin Rossdale. So relationships notoriously are known for breaking down during Venus retrograde where they're no longer workable. So if you are going through a split during this period, just remember that at that time, 2 different marriages going through a split, 2 of those people ended up then together. Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani. So that is something to consider. It's also worth noting that Megan Fox actually did split with Brian Austin Green during this time, and they later reconciled, albeit they have since officially divorced. And she got engaged during the Venus retrograde, the last Venus retrograde. But it is worth noting that sometimes celebrities do split and rekindle, or people split and rekindle during Venus retrograde. And it's important to note that there is a very strong link to romance with Venus retrograde in Leo, because Leo rules the heart. So Leo rules our heart space. And with it being retrograde, this is a beautiful time to look inward, to feel into your heart, to feel into your own emotions, and listen to your heart more. What is it trying to tell you? Because sometimes when we are trying to achieve something or we really want something to happen, we can go against our heart on the matter. And this is a time to reconnect with your heart space. If you have maybe been living from a more head-centered perspective, this can be a time to reconnect with your heart and do some healing. Because retrogrades are a beautiful time for healing. You might have to do some heart healing during this time. Especially because the South Node, as of the same week that Venus goes retrograde, so the South Node on the 17th, moved into Libra. And Libra is ruled by Venus. So we have a really strong connection here with these 2 taking place at the same time. And this, the longer transit of the South Node in Libra, which is going to go on until 2025, but is absolutely emphasized while Venus is retrograde in Leo. The longer theme of this particular transit is that it is a time to break free from codependent relationships. Relationships where you're not able to truly be yourself, you're not truly able to have your own needs met. And relationships where there are no possibility of compromise. That can be because one individual absolutely does not compromise. These type of relationships can split. Compromise is a big theme. And so this Venus retrograde with the South Node being in Libra, because the South Node is what we're moving away from, this can be a time where splits are more common. Because people are now going to be considering what they truly need and what they truly want from relationships, rather than entertaining one for the sake of having one, or for the sake of society, wanting to be seen as happily married for your business, for example. This is kind of a time to consider what you're really getting from your relationships all across the board, not just romantically, but particularly romantically. And this transit also, like Venus retrograde, emphasizes our past relationships, and they may come back up for review. You might have someone on your mind from the past that you want to contact, you want to connect with, perhaps someone from your past that you want to forgive. And this can also be a time when you reconnect with past life soulmates. And what that means is that you might be running into people, you might be connecting with people, and you really have that sense of, I've known you before. If you know, you know. It's that kind of, I feel like I've known you before, you're very familiar, but we haven't met before kind of energy. And as I say with Venus retrograde, where this goes, it depends on many factors. I certainly have met people who have met their person during Venus retrograde, although it's not recommended. But in most cases, these were people they had met before at least. They had connected with them before, and perhaps they'd each been in different relationships and it wasn't time. So there can be a reconnection to someone from the past that was not romantic, but is perhaps meant to be this time around. And you might also reconnect with people and realize that they aren't what you want. So you might have someone that you found it hard to get over, and you might reconnect with them and realize that they're not the person you thought they were. So as you can see, the majority of this is incredibly focused on relationships. Venus does rule relationships, but with the South Node being in Libra, the sign of relationships, and Leo ruling the heart, matters of the heart are very important here. But in relationships, this can also be a time that does bring up some conflict, it does bring up some discourse, and people when Venus retrograde are not necessarily as charming as usual, so do just bear that in mind. So this particular retrograde, the aspects that it's going to be making are quite important. It's going to begin retrograding at 28 degrees of Leo. And it's going to go the whole way back to 12 degrees of Leo. So if you pull up your birth chart, you can find if you have any placements or angles at 28 to 12 degrees of Leo, because these particular placements are getting hit 3 times. They will have been hit during the shadow, the retrograde, and the post-shadow. And that's significant because when it comes in a 3, it means that there's a wider theme playing out that is significant for you. So if you have any placements at 12 to 28 degrees of Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio, as these will receive hard aspects from the transit, this makes them more impactful. Of notable importance is also 20 to 23 degrees of the fixed signs, so that is Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, and Scorpio. You're going to be affected quite a bit because you already have transiting Uranus in Taurus making either a conjunction of your Taurus, a square for Aquarius, an opposition for Scorpio, and a square for Leo. You already have Uranus making an aspect. And this is a wider conversation of this year. But then Venus is going to go into a square with Uranus. The exact date of this square, the first time it made the square was the 2nd of July. So if you think back to this 1st, 2nd, 3rd of July, what was going on in your life at the time, that might be how it's playing out. The next square during the retrograde is going to be the 9th of August. Now, this square can bring sudden and surprising changes when it comes to relationships and finances. So do watch for that and be wary of letting your pride be a sore point in these areas. This tends to bring shocks, surprises, sudden changes. This is really not the best time to make any change to your appearance because this can be incredibly unpredictable. Unless you're going for something incredibly unpredictable. There's also a link between Venus retrograde in Leo, the South Node in Libra, and then the square to Uranus. It may bring matters surrounding LGBTQ+ into the spotlight, so whether that's that you're attending a pride event or whether that this is something that is dominating the news at this time, these matters tend to come up during Venus retrograde, and particularly when the South Node is in Libra. But the last time Venus was retrograde in Leo in the summer of 2015, I believe, don't quote me, but I do believe that same-sex marriage was legalized in the United States. The same year it was legalized in Ireland, but I'm not so sure it was during the Venus retrograde period or not. I think it may have been, but at least I'm pretty sure it was legalized in the States during the last Venus retrograde. So this can heighten the conversation, or this can heighten this being a very significant topic or theme of discussion. So if you want an idea of how this square may play out for you, do look back to the 2nd of July and see what was going on at that time. Once Venus goes direct, it will square Uranus on the 29th of September, again at 22 degrees of Leo. This transit, this particular square can bring sudden changes of heart. So try to avoid signing on the dotted line for anything around the 9th of August, as you may have a sudden change of heart. A moment of clarity, though, does come in on the 13th of August when the Sun meets Venus. So this is the conjunction of Sun and Venus, and this is when Venus disappears from the evening sky and reemerges as the morning star. So this is beautiful because this, metaphorically speaking, coming out of the darkness into the light, having clarity, being able to see more clearly, Just like Venus is finding new beauty in the lighter sky, we too come out of the darkness and into the light and get this clarity on what we need and want on a heart level. This is a time when you might be more aware of what's going on with you on a heart level, listening to your heart, understanding what it's trying to say. And beautifully, on the 14th, the day after, Venus then moves into a trine with Chiron. So Chiron is the wounded healer. And where Chiron goes, it shows us where we need to heal. And in the sign of Aries, this is individuality. This is surrounding identity. This is surrounding who we are, our own personal beauty as well. And with Venus trining, which means forming a harmonious alignment with Chiron, this brings an opportunity to lean into some heart healing. And whether that's through Reiki or meditation or mantras or affirmation, or just simply tuning into your heart and listening to what it wants to say, Chiron in Aries shows us our wounds of self-acceptance and self-love. And the trine to Venus is giving us the tools and opportunity to practice self-acceptance, self-love, and knowing that despite your flaws, despite what it is that you don't like about yourself, you're still worthy of love and connection of all kinds, and worthy of being seen for who you are, which is a beautiful part of the Venus trine Chiron transit. So this is again one of the significant aspects happening with the Venus retrograde. We have the square to Uranus, we have the trine to Chiron, and then we also have a square to Jupiter on the 22nd of August. So the last time this happened was the 11th of June. So think back to the 10th, 11th, 12th of June. This square will happen the 22nd of August, and it will be at 15 degrees of Leo and Taurus. So if you have anything 15 degrees Leo and Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, note it. Although you will probably have seen around the 11th what this theme may be. The last time it happened was at 5 degrees, and this time it's at 15, so it may impact different people. But themes may repeat and a picture may have been painted around this time, and then the 17th of September will be the final square. So with Venus being in Leo and it's squaring Jupiter, things can get quite dramatic, things can get blown out of proportion. And there's a lot of ego involved in this, and ego is obviously not either a good nor a bad thing, it simply is. But it can show us where we have perhaps built up walls. And with Leo, it's almost like a gilded cage. It's where we have tried to protect ourselves on a heart level, tried to protect the heart, and then ended up being quite disconnected and blocked off. And perhaps with this square, it could be a good time to consider your spending. Spending might, you might feel more encouraged to spend a lot of money at this time. But ask yourself, what are you spending it on? Who is that trying to impress? What is that for? Do you find that actually fulfilling? And the same with relationships. It's like, is this person just beautiful to look at? Is this person just successful? Is there an actual heart connection? With everything going on at that time, whether it's romantic, relationship, or financial, do ask what is the connection, and is there a heart connection at all? This one can bring a bit of drama and it can bring a lot of ego. So try to challenge your ego during this retrograde, because although the ego may have been keeping your heart protected, it can also be keeping it out of reach. So that's important to consider. So those are the themes for Venus retrograde. As I say, it ends on the 3rd of September and the shadow officially clears on the 7th of October. So I'm going to draw a tarot card for the Venus retrograde transit. To summarize, Leo is an incredibly heart-centered sign. So most of this retrograde is centered around love of all kinds, relationships, and what is on your heart, what or who is on your heart during this period will be significant. What is your heart trying to tell you? And it's a beautiful time to reconnect with our heart. So we have the King of Cups and we have the Page of Swords. Connecting to others and being able to communicate what's on your mind. The Page of Swords is a page of communication, and because it's a page, it's not necessarily an expert. It's not the most eloquent. It's not the most well-versed in what it's trying to say, but the King of Cups is certainly emotionally intelligent, emotionally aware, and knows what he's feeling. So even if you feel as though you cannot articulate it as well as you would like, the King of Cups is saying to try. So whether that is that you perhaps want to write poems, you want to write a book, you want to paint, you want to do something artistic, or you want to express yourself, but you feel it won't be a masterpiece, that does not matter. Don't be aiming to create a masterpiece during this time. Venus does rule the arts, and when it's retrograde, we're not necessarily our best painters. We're not we're not Michelangelo. We're just not at our peak creatively. And this isn't about creating a masterpiece. This is about creating and healing. So using it as a tool for emotional self-expression, to process your own emotions, to heal from something, rather than make it the greatest work of art that ever existed. Not doing it to look beautiful, not doing it to look fancy, because Venus aesthetics and retrograde things don't necessarily come out that well. But if it makes you happy, if it makes you feel joy, if it makes you feel creative, do it. And if you feel that you need to express what's on your heart, do it. That is what Venus retrograde asks of us. This one is very much about reconnecting with the heart, reconnecting with our own emotions and what makes us happy, what brings us joy, what brings us pleasure. So I am going to go into what it means for each of the individual zodiac signs. The timestamps are listed below. As always, check your rising sign. If you don't know your rising sign, you can of course check your sun. And if you know your big three, your sun, moon and rising, you can watch all three for a bigger picture. But that is all I have on the collective energy for Venus retrograde in Leo. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Leo, welcome to Venus retrograde. Let's start with you, because this is happening in your sign. The retrograde will be happening in your first house of identity and self. So this is an incredibly personal one for you, Leo. Now, because Venus rules beauty and it rules aesthetics, you may feel a little self-conscious or insecure with your looks. And this may be prompting you to want to make some kind of change. Maybe cosmetically, you want to change your hair. Maybe you want to try filler, or you want to change the color of your locks or something like this. Try not to make these changes, because Venus is skewing your perception of what is beautiful, what isn't beautiful. So you may not be happy with the results once Venus goes direct, or it might be that something does actually go wrong, because those that work in beauty might not necessarily have the best eye during this time, even if they're professionals. If you go to someone brand spanking new, you might not have that kind of connection. They might not know what kind of hairstyle you're actually looking for. There might be misunderstandings. You just may not necessarily be so happy with how it looks, or it might not go so well. So even if you're feeling a little self-conscious or insecure, this isn't the time to go out and book a new appointment with someone you've never met and try something drastically different. Certainly don't get a tattoo. Don't do anything that's very permanent, or very hard to change or undo, because you just may feel that it is not something that you truly want come September. So experimenting with your appearance might not go as well as you'd like. Venus is a great sign to have in your first house because it does rule beauty, but when it's retrograde, it skews your perception. So you may feel a little insecure about your looks, and this might be something that's come up for you before. This could be something that has upset you before. And I will say, because there's going to be squares with both Jupiter and Uranus in your 10th house of your career, you might find that if you're at a work event, you might find that someone at your work or someone in a position of authority says something to you about your appearance that makes you feel self-conscious, or says something that makes you feel a little bit insecure. And it's worth noting as well that this may not necessarily be intentional, because Venus does tend to make us a little less graceful, we don't carry ourselves as well. People can act a little bit out of character. If this does happen to you, obviously it could just be someone being incredibly rude, but there just may be a little bit of a clash when it comes to your work. And it might even be that you show up to work and you're wearing an outfit that is not, say you work in a place where a uniform and they have a non-uniform day and nobody tells you, you show up and you feel very out of place. There's a bit of a clash between your career and your own identity, your aesthetic, Leo. But there's a beautiful trine to Chiron in your 9th house. So I feel that perhaps learning is going to help you heal any insecurity that you have. If there's something about your appearance or something about yourself, it can even be your personality that you're feeling a little bit self-conscious or insecure about, or how could anybody accept this, or how can I accept this? You might get a perspective from a teacher, you might get a perspective from a philosopher, from a different philosophy, a different religion that helps you practice self-acceptance. This one for you is very focused on self-love, so you might want to reconnect with yourself a little deeper, spend a bit more time with yourself, really getting to grips with who you are and what makes you beautiful. Relearning to love yourself may be a theme here. For you, Leo, relearning how to connect with yourself, to follow your heart, and to focus on what it is that you love about yourself, what it is you love about your personality, what you love about your goals, what you love about your hair, what you love about your feet, whatever it is. Leo, this is a wonderful time to focus on what you love about yourself and really amp up the self-love, whatever that looks like to you, whether that is through journaling or through meditation or through taking bubble baths. You might need to take a little bit more time to yourself and really reconnect with yourself at this time, Leo. Really pulling into self-love and also reflecting, because Leo is a sign of love, and what makes you feel loved, what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel fulfilled. So that is what I have for you, Leo. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Virgo, welcome. So Virgo, this Venus retrograde is happening in your 12th house. This one's quite a sleepy house, so you might not necessarily notice a lot happening around you per se. And if people are returning into your life or from the past, they may be showing up in your dreams, because the 12th house rules our sleep state, our dream life. And I will say this is giving a little bit of Greta Garbo, I want to be alone energy, because you might feel more inclined to take more time to yourself, to spend more time in solitude and spend more time in reflection. So this might be voluntary, this might be involuntary, but it feels like you will be spending some time alone, Virgo. And do be careful of total isolation or avoidance rather than healing. You know, there is a difference. You might be trying to avoid something in your life. You might be avoiding events, maybe because you are, say you're single, you're maybe avoiding it because you don't want to be the single one there. Or you're maybe avoiding going out because you feel a little bit awkward or insecure with Venus retrograde. But what you choose to do with your time is, of course, up to you. I will say that this is a beautiful time for healing, meditation, listening to subliminals that focus on self-love. With Venus retrograde in Leo, subliminals that help you connect with your heart, because your sleep state is very important for this one, Virgo. And you may also find that you're having a recurring dream. Perhaps there's something that needs to be resolved there. But you're reconnecting with your soul at this time. So sometimes the 12th house is to do with past life soulmates. So you may reconnect with people that you have past lives with, if you believe in that, of course. But this can be a time where you're maybe keeping more secrets than usual. This could also be a time where you learn of someone's secret attraction to you that surprises you. Or you learn that someone has perhaps been watching you from the shadows, hopefully not in a creepy way, but it might be that someone on social media, for example, is keeping an eye on you, Virgo. And because Venus rules your second house, and this is a retrograde period and Venus does rule finances in general, I think you might be reflecting on what you're spending your money on. And you may also be recontemplating your relationship to your faith, because Venus rules your 9th as well. So those are things that you could be contemplating when you're spending more time alone. Perhaps you're deciding not to go out more because you want to save money for something you have your eye on in the future, Virgo. But I will say, make sure that you're not spending the whole time in solitude, and that if you are in a very reflective mode, you're making sure that you're making the most of it, you know, from a heart center level, whether that's being creative, doing things that you love to do alone. And Leo is a sign about fun, so just do remember to have fun. You know, I feel like being a Virgo rising, you guys can have a lot of fun alone when you have a Leo 12th house. But as I say, be careful of total isolation, Virgo. The squares to Uranus being in your 9th house is making me think that perhaps you're planning to take a trip, and if you're traveling around the 9th of August, there could be some disruptions, there could be something that maybe happens suddenly that changes your plans, or perhaps there is some sudden change of heart when it comes to a trip that you want to take, Virgo. So do watch out for that date in particular. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Libra, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Libra, you are quite affected by this because of course, being a Libra, you're ruled by Venus. And so every 18 months, your ruler goes retrograde. And that is very personal to you because you may find yourself in a very reflective mode about yourself and your approach. And when your ruler goes retrograde, you might feel as though your powers of charm and gracefulness are dulled ever so slightly at times, and you might be quite hard on yourself as a result. So just be mindful of that. When your ruler is retrograde, you're more reflecting on your own approach. And when planets are in retrograde, they bring us closer to the issues that we're having. So you might be unnecessarily hard on yourself at times about your approach or about your aesthetic or your appearance or your personality. You might be a little bit more hard on yourself than usual because you're seeing it through a magnifying glass. And you can, of course, try something different, but bear in mind that with retrogrades, it's more about reconsidering so that we can make the changes in the long run rather than trying something incredibly new. At this time, Libra, if you're feeling a little bit hard on yourself, you don't have to go suddenly invest all your money in something that you think will help you fix it, is what I'm trying to say. But nevertheless, this retrograde is going to happen in your 11th house. And the 11th house is about our friendships, our peers, our social networks, our teams, and groups of people, and also what you want for the future, your aspirations. So for a lot of you, this can be that you reconnect with your friends, you reconnect with old friends, people you've not seen in years, people you've not seen in a while, you've lost touch with, or you perhaps fell out with. And they're all coming back into your life. And as Venus is your ruler, you're reconsidering, do I want to reconcile with this friend? Do I want to reconnect with this group? Do I want to be a part of this social network? It can be that old friends are coming back into your life. It can, of course, as a retrograde, bring some trouble with friends or some trouble with teams, with groups, within a group of people. You might find that there's a couple of people fall out or aren't getting on so well, or there's something that needs to be reconsidered in a team that you're a part of or a group that you're a part of. With Leo being quite a dramatic sign, it can bring a bit of drama and it can bring a bit of ego clashes within whatever groups you are a part of, Libra. Now, this is also asking you what you want for the future. So from a relationship perspective, say you're in a relationship or you're married, this can be a time when you're revisiting an old issue about what direction you're going in, what you want the future to look like, because it doesn't always align. And this might be something that needs to be reconsidered and renegotiated. And if you're single, you might be considering what it is that you want from a relationship in the future. You might be asking bigger questions. You might be asking, does this person want to live in the city or live in a farm? Something like that. You're thinking about a lifestyle perspective and what it is that you want from relationships in the future as well, Libra. So certainly this one is very focused on your friendships, running into old friends, people that you used to socialize with, you used to connect with. This can also be getting a lot of friend requests on social media if you're on it from people from the past, or hearing from people online that you used to know or used to be connected with. So that is what I have for you, Libra. I hope you have a good one and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Scorpio, welcome to Venus retrograde for your sign. So Scorpio, this is happening in your 10th house of career and your goals, your public image. So whether you have a career or you do not, I'm going to go into what this means for everybody because I know that sometimes the 10th house can be very focused on career and work goals. So if you are working, you do have a career, this is asking you, how fulfilled do you feel? Because Leo is a sign of the heart. So is your heart in this? Is your heart in your job? Is your heart in what you're doing? Are you finding it fun? Are you passionate about it? Do you love it? It's a big question to ask when it comes to career. But these are the questions that you are going to be asking. This might also be reflecting on your public image, your public persona. So perhaps that is your LinkedIn profile, or perhaps that is your PR, whatever it is, you're reflecting on your public image. And because Venus is retrograde, Scorpio, I have to say, you might not always come across beautifully. You might not always come across gracefully, aesthetically well. You know, there could be a faux pas with something you wear to a work event. You could say something off the cuff that you really regret. There can be some issues going on. Do have a bit of grace and patience with yourself, because Venus retrograde tends to do that to all of us. This can also bring some issues or clashes with authority, and it can bring some workplace drama if you are in a workplace. And if it's not that you're in a workplace, this can be a clash or an issue with an authority figure outside of work. This could be a run-in with the law. This could be a clash with a parent, perhaps a father. But this is asking you, Scorpio, in terms of your life path in general and your purpose. Maybe you do not know what that is yet. Maybe you want to get a little closer to finding out what that is. So this might be something you're reflecting on. And to do that, you really have to get into your heart. You know, what is your heart telling you about the goals that you want for yourself, the direction that you want to go? Whether that's in your career space or not, what life goals do you have? What life path do you want to go down? And in what way is your heart leading you there or not? Because if you're not connected with your heart, Scorpio, you do not know what direction you're going in. If you have a workplace romance, there could be a little bit of drama going on. There might be something needs to be renegotiated or reconsidered. If you feel like starting a workplace romance during this time, Scorpio, I would strongly advise against it. Because it might not be what it seems to be, and this could cause some issues for your public reputation going forward. If you have a workplace romance, there could be moments of drama that don't necessarily look so good, so do be careful. Try and keep a separation if there are issues from your workplace and your personal life. Similarly, you may hear from people that you used to work with. You may hear from your old boss. You might hear from people that you used to that were involved in your career or had similar career goals, Scorpio. So you might be reconnecting with people you used to work with, or hearing from people that you used to work with in general. That's what I have for you, Scorpio, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, Sagittarius. Welcome to Venus retrograde. So Sagittarius, this Venus retrograde is happening in your 9th house. So the 9th house for you, you're very familiar with, because this is Sagittarius. The 9th house is your house. So you might not be loving traveling as much. Sagittarius is a sign that tends to love travel. You might not necessarily be enjoying it as much as you usually do. You might feel a little bit, if you're on a trip, that perhaps the hotel is not as beautiful as it looked online, or the area that you're staying in is maybe just not what it was portrayed to be, and you're maybe not enjoying it as much, maybe not feeling as connected with it. You're maybe not getting on with the locals as you usually would. You may also be doubting your education and your higher study. So if you're in higher education, you're doing a degree, you could be losing a little bit of confidence at times, and you might have some relationship issues with a teacher or a mentor. If you're in a long distance relationship, this might be a time that feels particularly frustrating for you. You might be wondering, what is the end goal here? How are we going to navigate this? How are we going to work with this? Because sometimes Venus retrograde can mean that if you're in a relationship, the other person seems a little more distant, and perhaps this puts a bit of a strain on a long distance relationship. You may also be reevaluating and reconsidering your relationship to your faith and your belief systems, what it is that you believe in, whether you have faith that everything's going to work out. Maybe you're not feeling as optimistic naturally. Now, this can mean that you are going to hear from people that you used to study with. You perhaps met in a foreign country, you met on holiday. You might hear from people that fit that description. You might also hear from people you went to college with, university with, and you might perhaps, if you had books on a certain belief system or a certain philosophy, you might pick those up again and find that you're resonating with something you used to believe in and reconnecting with that old belief system. You might also run into old teachers. You might run into your teacher from school. You might run into a professor that you used to know. You might pick up an old book that you really loved prior as well. And because this is all happening in the sign of Leo, I feel like if you run into an old teacher, this might be a teacher that you either really loved or you really had an ego clash with. Or if you run into people from university, there might be people that you had romances with. Or it might be that you're running into them because your children are friends with their children or something like that. But it feels, Sagittarius, that you're really reconsidering from a faith perspective. and a belief system perspective, what you want going forward. And perhaps when it comes to your children, you're maybe reconsidering how you want to bring them up in terms of their faith or their belief systems as well. Because Leo is a sign that rules children, Sagittarius. So that is what I have for you. I hope you have a beautiful retrograde period, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Capricorn, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Capricorn, this one for you is happening in your 8th house. So this is quite a taboo house, and it is very, how do I put this? The Venus retrograde might have you feeling a little bit insecure in your intimate connections, or surrounding your intimate connections in general, connected to your most intimate, close relationships. You might be reconsidering these. You might be reconsidering your relationship to intimacy, your relationship in close bonds. And you might also be reflecting on your fears, because the 8th house can create phobias, it can bring up moments of crisis, and you might be reflecting on your, what you're scared of, why you're scared of it. Capricorn, so if you have any phobias or fears, this might be a time when you're readdressing them. This can also be a time that perhaps draws your interest back into things that are quite taboo, or the occult, for example, say astrology, say tarot, or perhaps even psychology. Or a lot of the time with 8th house retrogrades, you can see people really interested in true crime and conspiracy. So perhaps you're looking into these matters a little bit more closely during this time. If you used to have an interest in that, all the more, you might find yourself drawn back into it again. So perhaps you used to listen to astrology videos, and now here you are because you're curious about Venus retrograde. Or you used to listen to a certain true crime podcast, and now you're doing that. Or that might be that you had an old issue in relationships that's now creeping up yet again, or within a relationship, and you're having to readdress it with Venus. And this might also bring up matters, some discord, or perhaps disruption when it comes to a joint financial venture. So your joint finances with your spouse or a business partner or the government or something. There could be a need to reflect on this. There could be tax issues, I will say, with Venus retrograde in the 8th. You might have forgotten to file something, or you might have missed a deadline, or there's perhaps some money that needs to go out. But this can just as equally be, Capricorn, that you get a tax rebate. Perhaps you paid too much and you're getting that money back. Retrogrades return, so perhaps you're getting back money that you're owed from the government, or from a spouse, or an inheritance, or something to do with other people's money. So not the money that you make on a day-to-day basis, your financial connections to others, whether that be a person or an organization. But I also feel that when it comes to the 8th house, just simply reflecting on your emotional bonds and connections and how deep you're willing to go. For example, you might have a partner where you want to discuss something because you might be feeling really interested in psychology. And you might be looking at certain things. So for example, Venus rules your 10th house, and Venus also rules your 5th house. So you might be thinking about, how has my childhood psychologically affected me, and thus the career path I've chosen? Or you might be thinking, how am I expressing my emotions, my love, for example? You're reconsidering those issues, and you might run into an issue with a partner, say, where they're saying, no, you don't want to unravel that. You don't want to go that deep. And you're thinking, I actually do want to go that deep. And then it's causing a little bit of discord, and you're thinking, well, why can't you come this deep with me? That kind of thing. I think from a psychological perspective, Capricorn, you're going to do some digging. You're going to want to do some digging. You're going to want to do some reconsideration from a psychological perspective. So if you want to reconnect with a therapist, if you want to reconnect with a counselor, a psychiatrist, or anything like that, this is the time to do it. Note I said reconnect. It's not necessarily the best time to get a brand spanking new one. But it's a really good time to do some digging with this particular retrograde happening in your 8th house. I feel like you could really do some reflection on your psychological state and what's going on with you and your soul. So this one's quite deep for you, Capricorn, I will say, but I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have a beautiful retrograde period. Bye. Hi Aquarius, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Aquarius, I am the most interested in this one for you, because Venus is the planet of love and relationships, and it is retrograding in your 7th house. So think back to the summer of 2015. What was going on in your relationship world? What were your thoughts and perspectives on the concept of relationships? Because you might be hearing from people that were around during that time period, or you might be coming up again against an old issue from that time period within your relationships. So think back to that time period. What was going on? Where were you? Who was in your life? What were your thoughts about your relationships? What were your beliefs? This is certainly a time where you are most likely than any other sign, I feel, to run into an old love, an ex, a past relationship. And if not literally, perhaps in your dreams, or perhaps you're simply reflecting on your past relationships or past issues within your current relationships. There may be an issue in a relationship that does crop up again. If you're in a relationship, this particular retrograde is going to be squaring Uranus in Taurus, your 4th house of home, family, living situation. There could be a little bit of discord, maybe between a partner and your family, or the topic or concept of family with your partner, perhaps where you want to live, perhaps what you want to do to the home, perhaps what kind of family you want together. These could be points of tension, Aquarius, that come up during this time. Most likely your living situation or your own family could be a source of tension within your relationships. This is probably something that has already come up before, but if anything is going to be a topic of perhaps frustration, it feels like it's linked to your home, your family, your living situation. You're really reflecting on current relationships. Now, I will say, this can, of course, the square to Uranus, the Venus retrograde in the 7th, if a relationship is not working, this may exacerbate the issue. This might be a time where breakups are more common, but similarly also makeups are just as common as well. With Venus retrograde, if you're single, you may connect with someone from the past again to give it another chance. Or if you're in a relationship that is on its last legs, this might be time when you're ready to let it go, because Aquarius, you really feel that you don't want to repeat the old patterns anymore or something like that. This can bring shocks and surprises. Uranus is your ruler, so I feel as though the square to, in a traditional sense, Saturn is your traditional ruler, Uranus is your modern ruler, just for clarity in case someone's like, I thought it was Saturn. It's both. But this can be a time where you perhaps are making the shocks, you're making the surprises to your partner. This might also be a time when your partner surprises you. They could suddenly, out of character, dye their hair fluorescent pink. You just don't know what could happen at this point, but they could totally surprise you at this time, and you think, that's not a great idea. You should have consulted somebody, anybody on that. If they come in and they've made a huge change to their appearance, which is common during Venus retrograde. But this can, of course, bring up some relationship issues to be reflected upon, to be resolved. I do think that the trine to Chiron in your 3rd house means that this may be a time to heal the language that you use in a relationship, the way that you communicate. Any communication issues could be, this is a beautiful time to heal that, to consider how you communicate first and foremost, and then perhaps learn a little bit more about it, read a book, take a workshop about communication, and bring those tools into your relationship if there has been an ongoing issue with communication. Or perhaps even learning about your own attachment style in relationships. Whether you're single or in a relationship, this is a good time to do some inner work when it comes to your relationship world. And the trine to Chiron makes me think that perhaps some of you are going to come across a book or a source of information that really helps you heal something from a relationship perspective, Aquarius. This is not the time to make any kind of commitment. Don't propose, don't get engaged, don't get married. Don't suddenly leave your home for that new person you met that you're convinced is your soulmate if you met them during Venus retrograde, for sure. No big commitments when it comes to your relationships for this summer, Aquarius. It's a time to reflect instead. That is what I have for you. I hope you have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Pisces, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Pisces, this one's happening in your 6th house. If you're going to hear from anybody from the past, it is going to be from someone you used to work with, or someone you used to go to the gym with. This could be someone that was a nutritionist, a dietitian, a personal trainer, a doctor, someone that you used to know through health matters, or someone that you used to work with, someone that used to be a part of your day-to-day routine. These are the type of people that you can be reconnecting with under this particular Venus retrograde, or you might hear from an old workplace specifically. But in terms of your health, Pisces, this is where I really want you to focus for this particular Venus retrograde. You're reconsidering how you look after your health. You're reconsidering what you eat, the exercise that you do, how much you meditate, what your body needs in order to function at its highest level. Now with Venus, this can be that you're thinking of it from an aesthetic level. You're maybe thinking you want to look a certain way, of course. But this can also be one of those times when you realize how much your health and your beauty are linked, how healthy you are. Perhaps when you're getting all your nutrients and you're drinking more water, you're realizing you glow more and you feel better, and thus you're attracting more good things into your life. And you're really reconsidering the beauty in your day-to-day space, in your day-to-day routine. This isn't the time to suddenly get a brand new personal trainer, because you might not like them very much and you might not get long-term results with them. You might not find that if you get a new doctor during this time that they're the best fit. You might not find that if you buy athleisure wear that it looks so good once it arrives in the post. You might find that trying a brand new diet is going to end in, it's going to last a day. But if you reconnect to something that you used to do, say you used to practice, intermittent fasting, and that really worked for you, you felt much better, you might pick that up again and it work. Or you used to have a personal trainer, you reconnect with them, and that's great for your stress levels. You're also rethinking your routines at work in general and how fair they are. Is your workload fair? Is the service that you're providing fair? Venus is all about fairness, so is it balanced? You might also notice people returning to the workplace. Perhaps they've been on extended leave or something like that. Or you might even find that you are having maybe some issues with people that you work with, particularly with Venus. Women, you might find they're not pulling their weight. You might find that they're not as pleasant as usual with Venus. There is going to be a square to Uranus in the third, so someone at work might say something very abruptly that upsets you. There might be shock news about someone in the workplace. You might find something very shocking about a workplace relationship that somebody's been having and you'd maybe no idea. But this can also be that perhaps with Venus retrograding in the 6th house, that if you have a workplace relationship, perhaps romantically, it could be a little bit tricky to navigate during this time as well. Venus does rule your 8th house, so when it comes to your intimate relationships, you're also reflecting on those. You're reflecting on how close you feel to other people as well, Pisces, with Venus retrograding in the 8th. And you might also find yourself, your interests in your day-to-day life, you're maybe looking for a little bit more mystery. You're maybe looking to uncover and unravel something that is mysterious. There could be a workplace mystery perhaps going on that you're trying to discover, Pisces. Or you could find yourself picking up an old interest in astrology or the occult or something like that as well, Pisces. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Aries, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Aries, this one for you is very romantic. So you may be one of the signs that runs into or reconnects with an ex. Whether this is a relationship or whether this was a fling or this was a flirtation, you might be reconnecting with someone from the past on a romantic level, hearing from them, or simply thinking about them. They could indeed be on your mind. Now, this might also be that you're reconnecting with an old passion, a hobby, something that you used to do that you really loved, whether that be painting, whether that be something musical, whether that be acting. You're reconnecting with an old passion or hobby, something that you really used to enjoy. Now, you're being asked in general to reconsider and redefine what makes you happy, what makes you feel love, what makes you feel passion. And also what your romantic needs are. You're reconnecting with your heart in general. What is on your heart? Who is on your heart? And you may have to do some heart healing. You might have to process some emotions that perhaps you've blocked off, perhaps you have ignored. There is a trine to Chiron in your 1st house, so this is very self-focused. There's a lot of opportunity with this particular transit, Aries, for practicing self-love, developing a better relationship with yourself. There's a square to Uranus in your second house, and I want to say this. Maybe absolutely don't gamble, don't take unnecessary risks, especially financially, Aries. They might not pay off. And if you meet somebody new during this time, say you're single and you're dating, they may not be who you think they are. And that can go either way. That can be that you perhaps think they're the greatest person on the planet and you think this person's absolutely amazing, when in actuality, that mother right there is not real. You know, that's kind of literally the scene that pops into my mind is that mother is not real. It could be that you've completely misread a person. Similarly, that can also be, or on the contrary, that can also be that perhaps you're looking at someone and thinking, I don't like you because they're not appearing so well. But actually, once the retrograde passes, you might think that person's brilliant. You know, it skews your perception, basically, is what I'm trying to say, Aries. If you're single, I would say take a break from dating. If you can, during this period, to reconnect with your heart, what it wants and what would make you happy. And you may hear from an ex, or you might be the ex that reaches out to somebody during this time as well. But that's what I have for you, Aries. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, Taurus. Welcome to Venus retrograde. So, Taurus, I was saying this to Libra, you're also ruled by Venus, and so with your ruler going retrograde, you know, you're aware of this, it happens every 18 months, but this might be a time when you are simply holding a bit of a magnifying glass up to yourself in the way that you present yourself, in the way that you appear, or the way that you behave, and you could be a little bit harder on yourself than usual, because when your ruler is retrograde, especially one as linked to beauty and refinement as Venus, you might be feeling a little clumsier than usual. You might be finding yourself not as charming as you would like to be, because Venus tends to cause a bit of disruption in this area. So just be like easy on yourself, Taurus, if you're feeling that way. Just try and give yourself a little bit of grace and compassion, very Venusian qualities. But this retrograde is actually happening in your fourth house. So I think for a lot of you, you're going home. So somewhere you used to live, or maybe somewhere you grew up, or somewhere you lived for a while. I could see a lot of you visiting somewhere you used to live, or going home, or simply reflecting on your past and how it shaped you into the person that you are. You might be going back to your past roots, looking into your ancestry, reconnecting with your family. In fact, some of you might actually be reconnecting or reconciling with a family member if there has been discord or disconnection. Taurus, you might be reconnecting with a parent, you might be reconnecting with a sibling, or simply a place at this time, Taurus. Because I remember whenever Venus went retrograde in my fourth house in 2020, I went to quarantine with my family. I left my apartment and went to quarantine with my family during the time. So that was an example of retrograding back home. And that something similar could be happening for you. You know, hopefully not the same circumstances, but you could be going back to an old home, back to your family, visiting your family, going back to the past in some way, and perhaps going back to the past and doing a little bit of digging as well. And as I say, Venus is who you are, so perhaps how it has turned you into the person that you are. Do be careful if you want to buy things for your home, if you want to redecorate. I bought things for my home at that time period when Venus was retrograde in the fourth house, and they just, your style is, it's different under Venus retrograde. I don't know how else to describe it. You don't see things entirely clearly. You might buy something thinking it's absolutely beautiful, but it does not match your aesthetic at home at all. Or you give it a couple of months and think, this is just not me. So it just might be a case where you do not end up loving the things that you bought eventually, Taurus. So be careful of investing too much or doing permanent redecoration or renovations on your home, unless it's something that you've been doing and you're picking it up again. Family could be a little triggering at times. Your relationships with your family could be a bit difficult at moments, but there is also the potential then for healing. It is going to be trining, Venus is going to be trining Chiron in your 12th house, so there might be the potential to heal some family issues and absolutely let them go, you know, process some stuff from the past even in order to heal and move forward. Now, you yourself might be quite unpredictable to your family because Venus, your ruler, is going to square Uranus in your first house. You might be wanting to do some crazy experimentation, crazy changes. As I say, try and channel that urge into something that is not permanent. Something that will not make permanent changes. And absolutely don't get a tattoo. Absolutely don't make drastic changes that you cannot easily undo or change, Taurus. With the square to Uranus in your first house, you may feel impulsive. You may feel inspired to make a crazy change. Venus is retrograde. It just might not turn out the way that you want it to, quite simply. That is what I have for you, Taurus. I hope you have a good one, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Gemini, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Gemini, this retrograde is happening in your third house. Of course, you're familiar with the third house. Gemini rules the third house. You might hear from old neighbours or people that you perhaps went to primary school with or elementary school, depending on where you are. People that you were in early education with, you might actually run into or reconnect with, Gemini. And you might find that you actually could find that these people end up becoming friends because there is going to be a trine to Chiron in your 11th house. So you might reconnect with people from your school days and reinstigate the friendship. And this could bring some healing conversations as well with people from your past. This might also bring some healing conversations when it comes to a sibling, when it comes to a cousin, an aunt, an uncle. There could be some sort of healing conversation within your relationships, Gemini, or you could reconnect with any of these people. Say you haven't seen your aunt in a few years, you could be making a trip to see them, or they could be making a trip to see you. People, though, in these categories, so your neighbours, your siblings, your cousins, they could all be acting ever so slightly out of character, and there could be a little bit of discord or old issues creeping up with these people. With Venus going retrograde, they might be acting a little bit off. They might not necessarily be the warmest, the most graceful. They might not be their usual self, and therefore there could be miscommunication. There could be some issues crop up that need to be ironed out. But I am seeing with the trine to Chiron, there's some healing conversations going on, Gemini. Uranus being in your 12th house, squaring the third, there could be words come out of nowhere that you might find quite upsetting from somebody. Someone could give you information out of the blue that's quite shocking. You could get very shocking news. Do think back to the 2nd of July, what was going on around that time. This might be something repeating during the Venus retrograde cycle in terms of shocking or surprising news. But Gemini, it does look for you that this is going to focus very much on your communication style, the way you articulate yourself, the things you say, the things you don't say, your body language, your telephone and email correspondence skills also come into question. You may be more likely to miss an email or perhaps to ghost somebody accidentally that could cause a bit of upset. So do pay attention to how you communicate, Gemini, and if there's anything there you would like to review. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Cancer, welcome to Venus retrograde. So Cancer, this one is happening for you in your 2nd house of money. So there's a few things that might be cropping up during this time. Firstly, you might be reconsidering how fairly you're being paid, because Venus is the planet that rules Libra, and Libra is the sign of justice. So are you being paid well for the services that you're providing? Do you feel like you're being paid fairly for how much you're putting into your work? Similarly, do you love how you're making money? With you having a Leo 2nd house, yes, this can mean that you love money. This can mean that you love making money, but do you love how you're making money? And what is your relationship to money in general? Because Venus is the planet of relationships, so you need to make sure that your relationship with money is good, or you can find yourself spending it unnecessarily, being careless with it, saving none of it, or perhaps even hoarding it. Whatever it is, Cancer, you're being asked to reassess your relationship to money, particularly through the lens perhaps of confidence. Are you spending your money on things to make yourself feel more confident when you could actually generate that for free from within? Is it to impress other people? Is it to show something? Is it to express something that perhaps does not need to be expressed or impressed? You might be reconsidering your values in general and what it is that you want and what truly matters to you. And I do feel you're also reevaluating what you're spending your money on for the most part. So perhaps, Cancer, this might be a time where you stop spending so much money on material possessions. Perhaps you're now thinking, well, actually, this is not making me happy, and I'm not saving as much as I used to, and I'm not saving money when, I'm being. You might feel suddenly surrounded by all this stuff, and you're thinking, why am I doing this? This isn't making me happy. So it's all about love, really, Cancer, because Leo is the sign associated with love. So if you love what you have, do you love the money that you're making, how you're making it? Do you love what you're spending your money on or not? These are all questions that you might want to reevaluate and reassess. So it's a good time to stop spending as much. It's a better time to save, and also reevaluate your relationship to money, whether that means that you read a book about relationships to money, or you watch a YouTube video on money and you understand your relationship to it better. What has influenced your spending, perhaps? What has influenced your relationship with money? What belief systems, Cancer, are in there? Because Venus does rule your 4th house of home and family and your emotional roots. So look back a little bit, and also pay attention to the money you're investing into your home at this time as well. With Venus retrograde, perhaps there's some things around the house that you need to finally get round to doing, whether that's a declutter, a clean out. There's some things you need to get for your home. Don't invest too much money in items for the home, I will say, Cancer, while Venus is retrograde, because you may not like them later, and it may end up being a little bit of a waste. And Venus it is known to skew our perception of what is beautiful. So you might be spending money on things that you no longer want in a couple of months. So just be careful of that. Maybe hold your horses on the spending. Put the debit or credit card on ice for a little bit and reconsider what you're spending your money on, but also how you're making it. And if you feel you're being paid fairly, this is not necessarily the time to ask for a raise, because things might not go so well if you do, Cancer. It's better to reassess and reevaluate, and then once the retrograde is passed, make the moves that you need to make. There will be a square to Uranus occurring in your 11th house of friendships. So I do feel there could be a bit of a clash with your friends or a group or a team of people when it comes to your values. Or perhaps a friend says something out of the blue that gives you a little bit of a confidence crisis at some point that you may have to lean into. And make sure that if you do have something that triggers you with that square to Uranus, that you lean into it from a place of self-love and compassion with this Venus retrograde in Leo. That is what I have for you, Cancer, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.